Good morning, everyone. All right, it is officially 11:02, so I'm going to go ahead and get things started and start out with some introductions. I am Caitlin Watts. I am the moderator for today. I have asked Wes Salisbury, James Meyer, and Amy Evans to join us today. Amy is a super user. Wes is obviously our lead consultant for Intacct, and James is our business manager or business development principal, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started today and get going with some questions. I want to thank all of you for joining us and continue to ask questions over in the right-hand side. You'll see the questions section. And I see Tatiana, I hope you have audio now, if you can hear. But go ahead and type in questions that you guys have. We're going to go ahead and just keep this as open forum as humanly possible. We do have a couple of questions that were sent in, so I appreciate those. You can use the chat or the questions box, either of them. So let me just go ahead and get started here. So again, we have Wes, Amy, and James. So Wes, I'm going to go ahead and let you start with introductions. Tell a little bit about yourself, then go to Amy, and then James.
All right, cool. So thank you, Kate. So hi, everyone. As Kate mentioned, my name is Wes Salisbury. I'm the Intacct consulting lead here at Maynard Costerisan. And for those of you who I've worked with, you probably worked with me for quite some time. I've been implementing Intacct for almost 6 years now. And yeah, so I've implemented a lot of folks. I've worked with a lot of different modules. I've seen a lot of different things. So yeah, that's about it when it comes to me and my extent with Intacct. Kind of brief, I know, but
really brief because you're a really awesome consultant. So we're very happy to have you.
Well, thank you, Kate.
Understated. Go ahead, Amy.
So my name is Amy Evans. I am currently the CFO for Great Lakes Bay Health Centers in Saginaw, Michigan. I have been in a lead finance role in a federally qualified health center, best known as an FQHC, for the last 12 years. For the last 7, I've been with my current employer here in mid-Michigan, and for the last 6, we've been running Intacct. So my first duty when I got here was to implement a new system, and we selected Intacct, and we used Meyer. And Wes, I think, just joined the team because it was July 1st, 2015 was our go live. So yeah, we've been working with Wes for some time. So I'm a big fan of Intacct, and I love having Meyer as support. So I'm really excited and honored to be asked to be on the panel today.
Perfect. So James, I'm going to go ahead and hop over to you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I think most of you probably know me, but I'm James Meyer. I'm a partner here at Maynard Costerisan in our Business Solutions Technology Group. I've been working with ERP systems for well over 30 years, worked with a lot of different software solutions over the years, was very instrumental in picking Intacct as a solution that we want to sell and support here at Intacct, or at Meyer. But if all the systems I've worked with, Intacct is by far the best system. I just love it. I just absolutely love it. So I'm happy to help and chip in here today. We actually had, I don't know if I said it, but we actually had another user who was going to be on the panel, and she had a little emergency and couldn't make it. So I'm filling in, so I'll do my best to fill in.
Go for it. Perfect. Yes, I figured James was a great fill-in. He has a vast experience with a lot of these questions. So perfect. All right, you guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and get right into the nitty-gritty and get into the questions. That was the whole point of this, is to open up the panel for everyone to ask questions and have a very open forum. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a couple that came in. So I'm going to ask this of each of you on these 2 questions here. So what were one of the bonuses of Intacct that you weren't expecting? That's the first question. So Amy, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay. I think most recently, I'm pretty excited about a project that we've started to have the system help us make internal transfers of expense. So we recently, and I wasn't necessarily, you would expect that this would have to happen through like a manual journal entry type of thing. And so we recently bought a copier that I swear could land spaceships. It's ginormous. It's our centralized print center. And so instead of sending everything out for printing to a printer, very expensive, we've decided to try and bring most of it in-house. It's not inexpensive to do. And so there is a desire to charge those expenses out to the departments that order those jobs, like they would have been had we sent them out to a true printer. And so we've used kind of manipulated the purchasing system, the purchasing module, to be able to have this happen automatically. It's transferring cost of labor and machine and time and paper to the correct departments, and finance is no longer involved in the process. It just happens on its own. And this was sort of a test pilot, a pilot project, because the real kicker is going to be in our IT department. We have a centralized IT department, and we want to do this with laptops and computers and all sorts of inventory that they currently absorb at the admin level. And so this is going to allow us to very specifically charge out the expenses. And again, finance will not need to be involved. It's just going to happen automatically, which is one of the reoccurring themes of Intacct that I do love.
Fabulous. Wes, I'm going to go with you first. Next.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Amy, because if you didn't, I was going to mention that, because that is a very creative use of the purchasing module. So the purchasing module, kind of its vanilla use is to process purchase orders and pass along approvals and eventually create a bill that matches PO. But really, you can do a lot of really fun stuff with it. Like you can make these transfer documents that affect your GL that have nothing to do with accounts payable, that have nothing to do with actual purchase orders themselves. So it's almost like, I kind of like to think of it as kind of like a cheat code in the system inside of purchasing, where you can pretty much configure it to do whatever you want. So since Amy brought that up, the thing that I wanted to mention is one of the bonus uses of Intacct that I wasn't expecting, I'm kind of going back to like when I first started as a consultant, right? So one of the things that I really appreciated in Intacct was in the dashboarding functionality, you had the ability to create all these really cool financial metrics. Right, so it goes far beyond just financial reports. Like you're not just looking at an income statement and balance sheet. You can look at current ratios, profitability ratios, turnover ratios. I, as kind of a side kind of hobby, because I'm not that great at it, but I like researching stocks, and I like to look at all these different financial metrics, and you can kind of build those same metrics inside of Intacct. So for me, the bonus thing I wasn't expecting when I first started consulting was the ability to create metrics on dashboards like that.
Fabulous. James, what is you compared to when you guys first figured out Intacct? What do you see now people using it for that you didn't expect?
Well, I don't know if people are actually using it much, but the feature, the one thing that I always the first thing I think of when you talk about kind of a bonus use of Intacct is the collaborate feature that's built into Intacct. When Sage Intacct first introduced that, and for those who don't know what collaborate is, it's basically a way to do kind of like instant messaging within Intacct, so that you don't have to send separate emails or separate phone numbers. You can just, from a document, you can just go ahead and send a note to somebody or to a group of people, and if you have questions on something. And when it first came out, I didn't see a lot of value in it, and I wasn't sure why they were, what the purpose was. But then as I started using it and looking at it, I thought, wow, this can save so much time. And it kind of almost gets to that second question you got here on the slide, in that it can really save people time if they use it and take advantage of it. Because it gives you, when you send a note to somebody, it's got a link that ties right back to what you're sending them the note on, and so they don't have to waste time trying to find it. I think that that's a huge benefit. I'd love to see more of our users taking advantage of that. of that feature. And plus, it's an extra audit trail that's in the system that's kind of nice to have. And I'd really be curious if who is using it, if they are using, people are using that feature.
Awesome.
Amy's group uses it quite fairly extensively as well, so she has plenty of experience there.
Yeah, we do. And it's funny that you mentioned the audit trail, because that was one of the warnings that when we launched, when we started using it was, hey, everything in Collaborate is discoverable. So just, watch your P's and Q's.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's go ahead and go right into the next question now that James brought it up. Is what is the best time saver you get out of Intacct on a daily basis, whether it was expected or not? And Wes, you can, let's go ahead and start with Amy right again.
So I don't even know how to narrow this down. I know that one of the biggest successes that we had when we implemented Intacct was our close was 45 days after month end. And when we implemented Intacct, we got it down really quick to 20 days, and we've shrunk it down. We've actually turned out our statements in 10 days, which for us is a big, big deal. I have a goal of 5 days. On the regular, we have the system closed by the 15th or 16th of the month. And so that's a huge improvement for us. So I think that has been the biggest time saver. That's the whole goal of my department, is to give people the information that they need in order to make good decisions. And Intacct helps enable that makes that information more timely and hopefully more accurate as well. So I think just allowing a lot of automation. We've started getting into the checklists. And so the monthly journals are going to start being loaded on checklists to help organize and keep things, keep us all on the same page and communicated. That we're looking forward to that, maybe helping narrow down that, tighten up that close again. But there's tons of time savers. The dashboards are huge time saver with all those ratios and metrics and reports, and just departmental, and just the dashboards are huge. The ability to import journal entries, huge time saver, huge time saver. We're working on integrating our system with our EMR and our human resource system to automate payroll entries, another huge time saver. So, there's a bazillion of them. I could go on and on.
Perfect.
Yep, and I'm glad, Amy, that you're kind of getting some use out of, so for those of you who maybe aren't up to speed on some of the new releases, or if some of you are kind of, or I guess I'll go ahead and kind of state this for all the folks of you who may not be running Intacct today, is Intacct releases quarterly updates, so for a year. And one of the recent features that they added to the core product are these checklists. So these checklists are kind of part of, they assist you in your not just monthly close processes, but your more infrequent processes as well. And it's just a place. It's a way for you to track kind of who has what on their agenda to do, and and like what Amy was saying, it helps accelerate track closing operations, things like that. So yeah, definitely a cool new feature from one of the new releases. But so my answer to this question, so what's the best time saver that we get out of Intacct on a daily basis? As a consultant, I'm not really an end user, so but I will say that one of the greatest strengths of Intacct when it comes to decreasing the amount of time spent per day on transacting would be if you're running if you're running a multi-entity organization, mm-hmm. and you are consistently paying bills on behalf of, or paying bills from one company on behalf of other companies, you set up Intacct with a matrix of appropriate due to and due from accounts. So when you say, if you pay expenses, if you pay bills for entities like B and C with a bank account that belongs to entity A, then there's automated due tos and due froms that occur that say entities B and C owe money back to entity A, and then entity A has a receivable from entities B and C. So the time savings of Intacct, the best time saver of Intacct when you're running a multi-entity organization like that are those automated intercompany entries, because you know, I've worked with some folks coming from QuickBooks where you need to go into each QuickBooks file and do each one of these entries. And honestly, for me, just switching between QuickBooks files is just like just a giant time waste. So the fact that Intacct does it automatically is a fantastic time saver for a lot of people.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was always my favorite thing on Intacct that I saw was people that have multiple companies. Intacct, just the multi-entity shared environment is just so nice, because you're just dealing with, you're not logging in and out of companies. You're just right there, and you can process all your transactions without having to log in and log out for all your companies. It's tremendous savings. But the other thing, I mean, just in general, I've heard we have several clients, Sage Intacct users, that have moved and migrated from Microsoft Dynamics GP or Great Plains to Intacct. And the common comment we get from them is everything they try to do is easier. Everything is faster and easier. And a lot of that comes down to just the real time, because Sage Intacct is real time. So you can, it's that ability to drill down and just about from anywhere. If I'm looking at something and I'm trying to figure out where it came from, it's so easy to drill back and see the detail. And you can do that from anywhere, whether it's from a dashboard, from a report, from even a transactions, you can do that. So that's where it's just a huge time saver overall.
So we have a couple of questions that we've actually kind of breezed. So I'm going to go ahead and interject them right here and kind of have you guys answer these questions. The question is, could you guys please talk about bank integrations and positive pay ACH files, as well as automatic bank rec? So, Amy, do you guys use that?
We do, but I don't. So I would not be the best person to talk about it.
Best for that answer. Totally
I know my staff was super excited about the most recent improvements that they've made to the bank reconciliation process. So I do know that. And we are one of the beta testers for the ePay. So that should kick off here in the next week or two. So we're excited about that. But no, someone else might be better.
Yeah, Wes, you want to go ahead and get into it?
Yeah, so Amy, you may not personally use it, but I work with a person in your staff who is using it. I'm going to answer this question kind of like at the end of it and kind of work backwards. So yeah, Intacct has the ability to import spreadsheets and import just on a base level, import your bank transactions with a spreadsheet, and then you can build rules that you can build rules inside of Intacct that allow you to automatically match up those bank transactions with Intacct transactions. So that's at a bare minimum what you're able to accomplish. So if your bank is amicable to it and you don't have any it works well with some banks, it doesn't work with others. But Intacct does have bank feeds similar to what you may see with like QuickBooks Online, where you connect your bank accounts to inside of Intacct to your actual bank accounts, and then you kind of have this live feed of transactions coming in that you can then use to create transactions inside of Intacct from, as well as help accelerate your bank reconciliation. Now, it works well with some banks, and then it doesn't work as well with some other banks. It depends. I find that it depends kind of on the bank's security and kind of on occasion the antiquatedness of their systems. So it depends as to whether that may be available, but a bunch of banks do support it.
Good. And then the next one, yeah, automatic bank recs. And yeah, I'm just checking to make sure that I think that answered her questions, but she may have more. So let's go ahead and continue.
Actually, yeah, I'm sorry. Part of that question is ACH as well. ACH and positive pay as well. Yeah, so Intacct also supports the export of an ACH notcha file, or a ACH batch file, whatever you want to call it. So you can get that ACH file out of Intacct after you process payments within Intacct, and then that file will contain the vendors' account numbers and routing numbers and all that stuff. and then you can just import that to your bank, and then your bank handles the payments from there. Some other banks have flexibility. Sometimes they'll just accept like a Excel spreadsheet of all these payments. I've seen that before too. And then yeah, so Intacct supports that. And then with Positive Pay, usually these days is just exporting a report out of the system and then just sending it off to your bank. So we have plenty of options there.
Fabulous. Excellent. Good questions. Keep them coming, please. That's wonderful. All right, let's go ahead and get to the next one. So there's a couple of technical lines in here, but this was a question that was fielded by our team. So one of them is, are there special forms for 1099s that you need to order? Wes, James, either of you guys? Oops, wrong way. Sorry, guys. There we go.
Is this the one we're responding to, Kate?
Yep, are there special forms for the 1099s? Yep, there's another one that's for Amy, but I'll ask that after this one.
I mean, I'll just handle that really quickly, and the answer is yes. So as of right now, you know, you do need to. I thought it was, hold on a second.
Bless you. Bless you.
I made it go away. I willed it away. So the answer to, are there special forms you need to get for 1099s? Yes, there is. You do need to get standard 1099 forms that Intacct will print out on.
Fabulous. Is there a checklist for the 1099s? So we're going to pair this question perfectly. Thank you. Are there checklists for the 1099s?
So let me. Was this a live question, or was this something that, okay?
Live question.
We may add. So I think the way I'm understanding that question, at least, is like, can you utilize? I'm assuming there's probably some tasks like at the end of the year that you will want to run through to make sure that your 1099s are accurate, like doing transaction level kind of analysis and things like that. But like that feature that Amy said that she's using, I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to point to the right direction. I don't know how it's showing up for everyone else, but yeah, you can utilize those checklist features inside of Intacct to build out little plans like, oh hey, do this, do that before 1099s can be printed.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that we're really looking forward to building out more of, especially for things that, like a 1099, that you only do annually. Like those annual processes that you're like, oh, that's right, how does this work? And you can use checklists to load all the documentation. You can attach files and send email reminders. Hey, 1099s are coming up, time to order those forms. You can use the checklist module or functionality to do that. It's a great use of it.
Perfect. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to actually surprise Amy with this question. I know that your implementation was 7 years ago, and I know that it was quite a bit faster now. But the question is, how long did the implementation take for you guys?
Oh, you guys might actually be able to help better with this. I don't recall. I want to say it was not more than 3 or 6 months.
Yeah.
Is that right? I think they're typically 3 or 6 months. I think there is, my experience has been that I'm often surprised at how easy implementations actually are. So fair warning, I love implementations, love them. Like I just geek when we get to do one. It's just so much fun because I like change, and you get to build from the ground up if you want. And that just is so exciting, such an opportunity to do it differently or do it better. So that's why I really like implementations. They're hectic though, and it definitely forged some relationships between us and some of Mainer's employees. So, but I speak with all of them still. So even the ones that aren't with Mainer anymore, I still stay in touch with the people I implemented with. So it was a great experience. But the thing that I will remind folks about is that I tend to hyperventilate when deadlines come up. And the wonderful thing about accounting implementations is that you sort of have, even when you go live, you have the entire full month before you close that month. And so even though like we went live July 1st, really the initial close was not until like August 15th. And so you have those 6 weeks to go live. You sort of have like this rolling implementation. At least we did, in the size of an organization that we are, which, you know, we have at the time we had like a $30 or $40 million budget and 300 employees. So, so it's not as like intense. You have that buffer, and that is a real comfort during the process.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit too. I mean, I think, Amy, it is a typical implementation is about 3 to 4 months, which I think was the case for yourself.
Yeah.
But that's just the initial implementation. I think where Amy's group has really taken it a step further, it's been almost like an ongoing implementation, because you're constantly looking at other ways to use Intacct to improve, and you've been adding things, and so. And not all of our users do that. And so I really encourage users to be thinking about that, because you know the implementation is just step one. It's a journey. It's not the end all. You still have a lot more that you can do over time to keep getting better and better and better, taking advantage of the software. I mean, there's so much you can do with it.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. And I'll tell you why we do that, because Intacct's not cheap. Intacct is one of the Cadillacs of accounting software in my mind, and you pay for what, you know, you get what you pay for. And so I am demanding that we continue to drag utilization out of the software. And luckily the software is amicable to that. It handles it. It constantly is offering new ways and better ways of doing stuff. And so, yeah, we're constantly trying to find new ways. Like, for example, when we implemented, we're like, yes, we're going to buy the asset piece. Remember what is that called?
Fixed assets, asset edge.
Yes. So we were like, yes, it can handle our depreciation. That'll be awesome. And so we purchased that at the front end. Well, we never implemented it. And so we canceled that subscription after a year or two or something like that. And now, 5 years later, 6 years later, we're like, you know what, now we're ready to go back and do that. And so we're looking at getting that done this year or next. So it is a constant ongoing. So I guess my word of warning would be there. Don't try and implement things that you don't currently do today. Just take your current system and get it running in the new system, and then start looking to the ongoing improvements.
That's really good advice, actually. And that's actually one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure we held this event, is to make sure that we continue to learn and share all this information with our newer, or even some of our older clients. There's a couple more questions that have come in, but let's go ahead and address the rest of this one, and then we'll continue rolling into the next ones and kind of scatter those through. So, does Intacct plan to eventually allow, sorry, I have something in front of my screen that is not moving, for adding rows to invoice reclassification expenses and revenue?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this, because I did hear back on. I have heard of this recently. Yeah, okay. I mean, it is on the roadmap. It is on the roadmap of Intacct for sure. So pretty much, essentially, just pretty much what the question here is pertaining to is if you paid. So for this in particular, before you pay an invoice or a bill, you can go in and add as many lines to it as you want, and configure all the different, add rows, remove rows, do all those things. Once it becomes paid, once you've paid that bill, you go through kind of a special reclass operation, which allows you to go in and change, like, row by row, like change the revenue account of this row or the expense account of this row. But the problem is that currently Intacct doesn't support adding additional rows or removing rows. So this has been the way for quite some time, but this is on the roadmap. I don't know if it's going to be next quarter or the quarter after, but my understanding from Intacct is it is on the fairly short-term roadmap.
Fabulous. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward to the next one. So we're going to get through a couple of these, and then there's a couple more questions that have filtered in, so we're going to address those after we get through a couple of these here. So the first one is, what are some things that you're tracking as dimensions in Intacct? So Amy, we're going to start with you on this one. Oops, going the wrong way again, Amy.
Oh, I'm a big fan of dimensions. This was like a demand walking in the door for all of when we were doing our vendor selection. I'm like, I gotta have some way to handle this. We have site, we have department, we have function, which is an employee's job title, really. So are you a family practice physician? Are you a finance and billing staff? Are you a nurse practitioner? Are you an optometrist? Are you a medical assistant? So it's largely by job description. There's buckets. So yeah, site, department, function. We have funder, which is really our grantors. We have anywhere between 20 and 50 grants a year. So we need to know, is that from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, or is that from HRSA, the feds, or is that from HHS, or is it from the Dow Foundation? And then we have project. We utilize the project module, again, not in the way it was intended, but we love the ability to use project, and project is for specific grants. So MDHHS, this year we got 8 grants from them, so each of those grants gets a project. And then we also use project. It serves a dual purpose. If there's an executive project that got approved, so say we want to renovate the purchasing office, well, that gets an approval of a budget of, like, say, $20,000, and so it gets assigned a project number, and then we can track the budget and expenses associated with that project, and we use project for that. We use project for tracking expenses to our fleet vehicles. We have 30 to 40 vehicles that we own, and so we track expenses and mileage, because nobody yet has mentioned the non-financial data that Intacct can capture, which is one of the most powerful tools. So we use project to track expenses and mileage and rides by vehicle, by VIN number, basically. So yeah, site, and then employee. We use the employee dimension as well. We're this close to building provider report cards. So we will have dashboards that are by provider that have their revenue, their expenses, an allocation for their staff, the number of encounters that they've generated, which site they generated them at. And then we have an extra dimension on the side, just in case we find a use for it. Because we added dimensions, and my understanding is it's hard to do it after go live. So think ahead and tuck one away for some future use. So yeah, I love dimensions. Would not be able to do my job without them.
So here's the one that's just what you just mentioned. How do your employees get you the mileage? How do you get that?
Yeah, so the mileage comes from the transportation department. They send over a spreadsheet that has the VIN number and the miles for the month, and we upload that. So it takes 30 seconds.
Perfect. Okay.
And
so,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to just make a note, just for the folks who maybe aren't currently using Intacct, who are in attendance. So you can think of a dimension. So a lot of traditional accounting systems have like account segments, right? So it's like your main account dash department dash location dash project, however many dashes you have. You can think of dimensions as each segment, but they're split out into different data objects. So you have a field for main account, you have a field for department, you have a field for location, etc. The reason why this is so powerful, and like what Amy was alluding to, is when you're tagging all this activity to all these different dimensions, it's really easy to pull out the data you want, right? So you can just go into Intacct and run a report and say, I want to see all of my activity for this VIN number, right? VIN number on this vehicle, or I want to see all the activity for this project. So it's really simple when you're tracking things when you split out your account segments into dimensions, it's really simple throughout the system to just get what you need out of it.
Yeah, and if I can just add really quick, I think, Wes, that's a super important thing, is that you need to understand dimensions before you implement, because some of the ways that we're using them now in hindsight, they don't work for us. And so we're looking into switching the use of them. But switching the use of them when you've already started using them is a very difficult conversation. And so really focus and really work with your team or your consultants to understand what reporting you're gonna want and how dimensions will help. Really force the issue to make sure that they're gonna work. Because I talked about how we use project more than one way, and the system will do that unless I have a project that's grant funded. That gets a little hairy. So you can't, I can't double up on my project use. So while I love them and we use them, looking back, there are some decisions that I would have made differently. So.
Yeah, and during, yeah, certainly. Sorry, James. Yeah, I feel like I'm not giving you a chance to talk, but no, but as a consultant, I'll just bring this up. Yeah, certainly as part of the implementation, the number one thing you have to get right as humanly possible is your dimensional setup. If you botch the dimensional setup, you're not going to have a great time using Intacct. So it's one of the most important things as part of the configuration process is to make sure your dimension structure is appropriate for what you're trying to use Intacct for.
Yeah, I just want to add too is you think about what you want to report on and the ways you'd like to report in the future. The other thing you need to think about is how easy is it to get that data? Can I get that data? Mm-hmm. So just some other examples of dimensions. We have one client that's a trucking company, and they track everything by truck, right? So it's easy, it's dimension, but they have a system, a trucking system, and they pull the data in from their trucking system so they can get that level of detail. We have another company actually that does shipping on the Great Lakes, and they track every ship and all the costs related to the ship. They even talked about tracking the captains because the ship could have multiple captains, and they might have different expenses depending on who the captain is. And so, but it's how do you capture that data? And in their case, they decided not to do the captains because they couldn't capture the data. They can capture the vessel data, but they couldn't capture the captains. So you have to think about that, both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
So a question just came in. I think this is perfect timing. Does adding additional dimensions slow down the system's processing time?
I'll go ahead and take that. From my experience, no. Really, the processing power of Intacct is considerable, and it doesn't matter if you have 100 transactions in it or 100,000 transactions. Intacct is going to really work the same way for you. And by adding an additional dimension, it's certainly not going to add, it's not going to slow down your processing speed, I don't think.
I would say that I agree with you that your day-to-day operations are not slowed. To enter an AP bill where there's 10 dimensions versus only 3 dimensions, we don't notice any difference. The only place I notice difference is when you're trying to slice and dice the information in reports. And when you're trying to build a report with low-level dimensional breakouts, when you're trying to, what is that called? When you expand the data, right, by dimensions, and there's a lot of them, that can slow the system down. It can slow the report generation down, and I have had instances where the report just never generates. So you do have to, the reporting generation capabilities are incredibly powerful when you combine them with good dimension setup, but there is some limit.
Yeah, and particularly when you, like Amy was saying, the report generator itself, it's essentially it's building essentially a tab in your browser window. So if it's a rather large report, yeah, it may take longer if it's an extra large report or if you're slicing and dicing by a lot of different things across a lot of different data points. But in the event where you do have a report like that, they do have kind of like a process offline option where it kind of parks it in the background, and it essentially uses up a kind of backup set of servers essentially to generate. So in the event where you have a super large report like that, you have options to still get it.
That's a great idea. I'm going to do that next time.
All right.
So the follow-up question is, what do you guys view as the optimal limit on the number of dimensions that you should use? And I think clarifying what Amy said was that sorry guys, was that you can use an unlimited, or the number of dimensions doesn't necessarily affect the system. It's when you're pulling on reporting that sometimes that can slow things down. Correct, Amy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what, it's just, if you have, like one of the reports that I do is a net asset roll forward, and there's a dimension spread across the top, and there's also a dimension spread across the side, down the side. So when you're doing 2 dimensions, you know, like by site and by department, and you're looking for it to put in all of that, it gets, I mean, what you're asking is incredible. And so if the system can do it at all, it's incredibly impressive. So that's the only place, though. In the day-to-day operations of functions and journal entries and data entry, no difference. Intacct, we've not really noticed a problem at all.
Wes, what would you think, to answer that question, the optimal limit on the number of dimensions you should use?
As many as you actually need.
As many as
yeah, as every client needs different amounts of dimensions. And one of the most important things as part of the build out from a consultant's perspective is using just enough dimensions to do the job. Because because there are cases where I've run into situations where clients may think like, oh, hey, we need an additional dimension for this, or you know, when we're analyzing their chart at the beginning of a project, we're determining everything that's going to be a dimension. Well, what we can do is we can use what are called dimension groups within Intacct. So just to use an example of what Amy was mentioning, so let's just say you have a list of grants, right? You have grant as a dimension inside of Intacct, but you want to be able to report separately on, like, report on all of your federal grants and then all of your state grants separately.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people think you need a separate dimension field to tag federal or tag state, but you don't. You can create what's called a dimension group, and you can create a group of grants that says, these grants are my federal grants, these grants are my state grants, and then when you run a report, you can just select a group of them instead of creating a separate dimension for it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so go ahead, Amy.
Well, I was just gonna say, and I really second what James had said about being able to get the data. Like, what you want to do and what you can do are sometimes 2 different things. But his point about, you know, they would love to track it by captain, but it's not realistic. I think that's an excellent point.
Awesome.
And the number of dimensions used varies wildly depending on who you are. Like typically not-for-profits, you'll typically see north of 4, north of 5, things like that. Whereas for-profits, I've worked with restaurant groups where we've only used 1. So it's like, it depends on what your needs are.
Yeah, a lot of thought goes into that. Because, and the other thing, Wes, you talked about doing groupings, but we also can use attributes, and we also can do parent-child relationships between the different dimensions, within the dimensions. There's lots of ways to do it, creative, but the one thing, if you have a lot of dimensions, it could potentially be extra cost. This is the one thing you need to keep in mind, because there are standard dimensions, and then there are user-defined dimensions, and the user-defined dimensions can at some point can be, you may have to pay for them. So if you really do have a lot of dimensions, we spend a lot of time. That's part of what we try to do, is help figure out the best way to do that.
Perfect. What are some of the things that you guys are doing with the purchasing module and other modules where you can configure approvals?
Well, so I think this kind of was a really good example of this was our discussion earlier with Amy and her group on using purchasing to do printing transfers, essentially a transfer of costs based on usage of that printer and that copier station. But I think though, one of the things that especially in a, I don't know if we're in the COVID era or the post-COVID era, I don't know what to call it, but we have more people working remotely, and because we have people working remotely, you know, a lot of people are transitioning into using the purchasing module to do approvals, because it's a lot easier to just approve these things remotely instead of taking paper to people's desks and saying like, Yeah.
That's a great idea. You could use the purchasing module just to capture an approval. It doesn't even need to do anything. It doesn't need to be writing the system. You could just use it to document approval of something.
There we go. Yeah, you see, after you know, we're consistently thinking of better ways to just use Intacct. So yeah, awesome. And yeah, Amy, let me know if you have any questions on that. But yeah, overall, we've seen a lot of clients and existing clients and new clients want to roll out purchasing and do purchase orders, capture the approvals there, just so that you have a record of like, this was an approved expense and you pass it on and pay it eventually. So yeah, that's I lost my train of thought, but yeah, that's a good use of what people use purchasing for.
Yeah, and those approvers are what they call employee users, so they're relatively inexpensive. So you can have a lot of people doing approvals without having a huge cost.
Yeah, and that is one of the issues that popped into my head. We do use the approvals in purchasing for purchasing. We're under the 2 CFR 75 or whatever, and the whole federal procurement clause. We're under that regulation, and so we have a pretty robust procurement process that requires different levels of approval, and we do document most of those in Intacct if the people who need to approve are users. So one of the things that we have not done is rolled out users to all managers, because all managers do approve purchasing, but some of them we just capture on paper and then we scan those in as the very robust attachment capability in the procurement module, because you have to think about who it's ideal to have as a user. Like my IT and my facilities department, they're purchasing stuff and approving stuff all day long. My center managers, they don't really. They utilize a centralized warehouse, and they might need an office chair once in a while in their building or something, but that'll be handled through purchasing, not through them. So it's not realistic for us to yet roll out users, and not financially responsible yet for us to roll out users to everyone just so that they can log into a system to approve a purchase order, a system that they don't normally log into yet. So, but to your point, James, it's wonderful that Intacct has a lower level of subscription so that they're not a full-on, very expensive user. They're a much more reasonably priced user. That is a benefit.
Excellent. Okay, let's go ahead and head to the next question here. And that is, when it comes to dashboarding, what dashboard elements do you usually use? And I know Amy is a lover of dashboards, so I'm very excited to hear her perspective. So is Wes, and so is James. So, Wes, do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was going to ask like which one of us should go first. Yeah. So with for me personally, of course, I've said it multiple times. I just can't stop myself from saying it, but it's like, I'm not an end user of the system, but what I like to build out for clients are dashboards where, first of all, I like to build dashboards that have financial metrics on it, like what my current available cash is, right? Like what's my current available cash? How am I looking so far on expenses for the period that I'm looking for? Am I trending up or down compared to last period, or am I trending up or down compared to budget? Things like that. And I think I mentioned that, I've already mentioned before that you can drop just your normal financial statements on dashboards. But one of the things I like to make sure that we talk about adding onto dashboards when I do training with clients and build out dashboard with clients is our queues to approve like purchasing transactions, right? So everyone has a queue of like, these are the things I've got to do. I've got to approve these transactions. If you're a controller or a person approving payments, these are all the payments we've got to approve. Then you approve those payments before they go out. Approve journal entries, all these different things in Intacct you can approve and have queues on your dashboard for. So I like to have those dashboards that are like part financial, but part actionable as well. Mm-hmm. And it's especially fun. It's especially fun when you like approve transactions, and then once they get approved, they get posted. and then you can refresh your dashboard and see what your new numbers are, what your new expenses are for your department or whatever it is that you're managing.
Amy, do you want to go next? Because I know you have.
Sure. I think one of the most powerful uses of dashboards that I'm grateful for recently is due to COVID. So as a nonprofit federal grantee in healthcare, we received a tremendous amount of COVID-related funding. And we utilized all those dimensions. Thank God we had dimensions because I was able to create a project. I'm like, it's a catch-all. Just if it has anything to do with COVID, put it in this project. And people did that. And so we were able to identify the expenses that were eligible, that were COVID related and eligible for all this funding that came in. We literally had 25 different COVID grants that came in, and I needed to know like instantly, like every day, what was going on, what was being spent, where were the expenses. And so I built a dashboard and I was able to get real-time insight into my purchasing. We use also a committed GL, and I keep talking about things that, you know, new users or non-Intacct users might not know about yet, but we utilize a committed GL so that I can see when purchase orders have been approved on a grant, but I don't have the invoice yet. So if we have a $100,000 grant and we already, you know, approved a $75,000 purchase order, even though there's zero expenses, we've already committed $75,000 of that grant, and I need that insight to know there's only $25,000 left to spend. And so I built those types of dashboards that gave me that information related to my COVID grants. And we were sending out daily, weekly, you know, 2 and 3 times a week, we were sending out updates of where is this grant, where is the spending, where is the project, because they all had tight deadlines of, well, they need to be spent in 6 months or they need to be spent in 12 months. So that was super, super useful. That was a really powerful tool that I was able to use that really helped us through COVID.
And just to add a little bit of something to what Amy mentioned about committed books. So yeah, Intacct supports the ability for POs to essentially post into a committed book so that you can track those expenses that you committed to separately. But to expand on that, Intacct, in addition to being a multi-entity architecture, it's also a multi-book architecture. So one of the features that Intacct has is if you want it to do it, you can track your accrual financials separately from your cash basis financials. Not every organization needs to pivot between accrual and cash, but if your organization needs to track between accrual and cash basis financials, it's just a flip of a switch inside of Intacct.
Yeah, we're planning on using it too for fully allocated financials and unallocated financials. We're going to use another set of books to do that here shortly. That project's supposed to happen this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's another great usage of alternate books. There's just throwing out other examples. If you want to report on tax basis, you can set up a tax adjustment book. If you want to report on GAAP, if you need to report on GAAP versus IFRS, for example, or IFRS, whatever the pronunciation is, you can deploy books for those, and you can input GAAP entries separately from your IFRS entries and things like that.
James, anything to add to that?
Well, just on the dashboard, it really is. It's related to what Amy was talking about and trying to get that visibility. Like she was looking at the grants, like, you know, where do we stand on the grant? But I think just the ability to have a report, particularly if you can provide dashboards to some of your key managers, to show them where they stand versus their budget if you're using budgets, because you can color code it so that they can see. So if I'm over budget or getting close to budget, it's going to be maybe red, so I can see instantly if I've got a potential issue with my budget. It's just giving people that visibility, but doing it on that's more of an exception basis. So so they don't have to be reading through, you know, reports. They can just quickly glance at it and say, "Oops, it's red. I got a problem here," and then they can drill down into it.
Yeah, and I'll even add one thing to that, because not only are those performance cards color coded, You can put a red dot or a green dot. That is an option, but they also have arrows, they have smiley faces, sad faces, they have thumbs up and thumbs down, which may seem really childish at first glance, but my new controller is colorblind. So guess what? Arrows up, thumbs up are going to be great.
Perfect. Such a cool use.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, I never thought of that either. So there's a couple more questions I'm going to kind of filter in here. It is almost noon, so we're going to want to make sure we have about 30 more minutes. So I want to make sure we get all these answered.
3 more minutes.
30 more minutes. So goes to 12:30 if everybody can stick. So what is the best way to learn about the full capabilities of the system by module? I'm going to kind of rely on Amy a little bit for this. What is the best way that you guys have learned about the full capabilities of the system? Is it just by asking questions? Is it by, et cetera?
Yeah, this one I think, I wish there was a magic pill, but there's not. Intacct does a fantastic job of release notes, and I think that is one way that you can do it without leaving your office, is release notes. But the best way is to attend the Maynard conference and network with your peers, and to attend the Intacct user group conference. The Intacct conference is it is the only conference I'm going to this year. That's how powerful and useful I find it. You have an opportunity to network and talk and ask questions and see how other people are using it. The conference is so hands-on. It's not one huge sales pitch. It is literally application, 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 application. And on a smaller scale, the Maynard conference is the same way. Here's the system, here's how you do it. Here are peers in your area that are using the software as well. So you can read the release notes and you can try and think of ways, and that is how we come up with a lot of them. At one of the conferences, in fact, though, I went to, they talked about a process of, okay, the release notes have come out. What are you doing with them? Are you just reading them and going, okay, that's nice? Or are you getting together a group of people and brainstorming, how can we use this? How would this apply? Is there another way to use this? Do we want to? Do we want to take the time? Do we want to put this project on our roadmap for research, investigation, and implementation? Which was a powerful, powerful concept, which I wish I could tell you we came back and implemented, but we didn't. But it's there, right? That's how you learn about the modules. That you have to network and talk to your peers and really access the tools that are available. And other than that, just ask questions. Give Wes a call and say, hey, this is what I want to do. How do I do it? Wes has more information about, some of the capabilities of the software than I do. So he has answers.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely. I'm biased, but you are always free to bounce ideas off consultants. We always love new challenges. Just again, going back to kind of when I first started and was still kind of learning the system is just the way I learned was clients would ask me like, "Hey, Wes, can we do this?" And I'm like, I don't know. Let me go look that up. And there's this and the Intacct help is really comprehensive. If you go out onto the Intacct Help Center, like inside of Intacct, pretty much if you read through that thing, you will learn everything there is to know about Intacct. Very detailed, very technical at points, but also very simple to read in some other areas. But yeah, the training that Intacct gives is really good. The conference is really good. And by the way, for those of you who do plan on attending as well, in addition to Amy, I am presenting on a technical session there this year. So I'm not going to tell you anything.
At the Intacct conference.
Yeah, at the Intacct conference. It's gonna be on smart rules and smart events. I know that we've already done some work with smart events, but yeah, I am presenting on a technical session this year.
That's awesome.
James, any advice?
I think they covered it pretty well on that. The only other, well, I guess, yeah, one other thing is this is something new.
Yeah.
Intacct's introduced. Intact they have on-demand training available that you used to be able to subscribe to individually for classes. And they've now introduced a new thing where for just a small, like flat fee per year, $1,200 a year, you can get unlimited access to all of their on-demand training, and that might be something that be helpful to people.
I'd agree with that. So fantastic. Here's a couple more questions that we're just going to go ahead and keep on going through. One of the questions is, when is the conference and how much is it? So Tatiana, I will send you that information so that we can go ahead and make sure that we get some things signed up and see what we can do for that. But it is in October, right, guys? Right, everyone? October? What, November?
I think it's early November. Yeah, it's early November this year.
Yep.
Perfect. And it's in Vegas, correct?
Yeah.
Vegas at the Venetian.
Woo!
So they upgraded this year.
Stephanie is on. She's probably laughing at us. November 10th to the 13th. Thanks, Tim. So November 10th to the 13th, and yeah, Tatiana, I can get you some information on that. And do users have the capability to generate the forecast based on prior year actuals and this year's actuals? So Amy, do you do any forecasting or anything like that for your budgets and stuff?
We really don't. Our budget story is a really odd one. So I know in the budgeting module, there is that, you can build the budget by adding a percentage or using last year as a model. I've never used that functionality. I still build my budgets on spreadsheets. I use Intacct reports that I export as the basis and foundation for those spreadsheets. But really, our budgeting it's weird because it's all grant-based. It's not operational. So our budgets are grant-based and not operational in nature. So I would not be a good one for that one.
Wes, I know that you've worked with some others on doing this.
Could you just restate the question just so that I hear the full thing?
Do the users have capability to generate the forecast based on prior year actuals and this year actuals?
Prior year's actuals and this year's actuals. Yeah, so I think that may warrant, if that's a client, that may warrant a follow-up discussion, just because it gets a little bit technical and we kind of need to evaluate what we're looking at. But yes, there is a way to do it. It's just there is a way to do it. It's just we'd probably want to dig into exactly how to accomplish that, depending on your setup. And I see Kate is getting pinged as well on this.
Which is fine. I can multitask, luckily. So I think this is actually a prospect. So I think this is a great conversation to have as we continue to find things that we can help them out with. But the budgeting and planning module might be something we want to dive into to help with that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kate. Yeah, so there's really a couple different ways you can handle budgets inside of Intacct. So kind of the native functionality within Intacct is pretty much what Amy is doing, right? It's a spot to import budgets, but most of the time you're doing those budgets inside of Excel and then importing with a spreadsheet. But there is a nice little add-on module for budgeting and planning that handles more complex computations and if this and that scenarios, things like that.
I think that this is where I might miss Britt just a little bit on this. She is a great user of Intacct budgeting and planning module. And so this might be something we want to field off of her a little bit too, to help you guys out with that.
So yeah. It's a topic for the future session.
It is. She is a lover of she's a lover of
planning.
Yes, very much so. So the next one is also similar to the budgeting, and I think that can the users enter budget data for the next year themselves without finance doing it, and that can be done through Sage Intacct budgeting and planning. So yes, but I would say that we would definitely want to look into that module for you guys. So I'm gonna field that one for you guys.
Thank you.
No problem. The next question is, and I'm gonna bounce this off of Wes a little bit more, and Amy actually. Yeah, James, all of you. Does Intacct have a portal for vendors to submit invoices?
Not with native Intacct, but Intacct does interface with third-party solutions that do.
Yes. Amy, how do you guys do this?
Our invoicing process right now is still, unfortunately, very paper-based. We've not yet made a transition. That was one of the things that we would like to do. We've gotten much better, and we've utilized some aspects of Intacct that have made our lives much easier. For instance, we do a lot of scanning of our invoices into Intacct. So come audit time, this is so wonderful. Come audit time, we don't have to necessarily pull the invoice copies out of the file cabinet. We can just kind of click and drag the PDF that's in Intacct into my audit portal. And I'm like, here's the file you wanted. Here's the invoice you wanted. Here's the invoice you wanted. That has been wonderful. But that scanning, that being said, that scanning process right now is very manual. You know, you walk over to the copier, scan a copy to a file folder, and then drag it from the file folder to Intacct. And I know that there are third-party vendors that do that better, but we just haven't gotten there yet. Maybe you guys know of those specifically.
I do. I know a lot of them for you. There are several vendors that can do things like this for you. There are some that can do it as automated as you want to, almost using AI and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can do them where it is simply email based and they can basically just enter them into Intacct for you. So there are a couple of ways to do this. Wes, do you have any other suggestions? I know one of mine always is to get the email set up, but Wes, do you have any other suggestions for that?
Yeah, well, again, it's the native way to just do it in Intacct is you just get an invoice from like a paper invoice or a PDF, and then you either enter it in, or you can import bills, or you can interface it with using the API or something like that. Yep. When it comes to portals, though, yeah, you do have third parties that have more of like a portal concept, but then you have other third parties that are more of an email concept where people send the bills to the email address, and then the solution goes through and scans in those for you, does some OCR reading of the documentation, and tries to fill out as many gaps as it can and input it into Intacct.
Perfect. Okay. You guys, there are a couple more questions. Just a second here. So here's a quick technical question. Is there a way to go back to the bills page in AP while entering in invoices? Currently, we mostly enter invoices by duplicating the previous. When we duplicate an invoice and change it to a new invoice information after we post it, is there a way to have it take us directly back to the bills page?
I mean, yeah, I'll go ahead and field this just because I don't know if you briefed Amy on these questions beforehand, but I'll just go ahead.
A little late.
Okay, I'll go ahead and because I already had a chance to think about this one. Because I know this is from a client. This may be something we circle back on, because when you post a bill, you have the ability to hit like post in new as well as post. Maybe just try hitting post instead of post in new, and it should take you back to the bills list. But other than that, that just may be a quick conversation that we have, just so I can observe your process and get you back to that proper screen. So yeah.
Perfect. So we have about 20 more minutes, so I'm going to open up the question field again. It looks like we have all of them answered so far, but I want to open it up again for more questions. I know that there's a couple of people who have just been holding off until we have time, so to make sure that we had time to address all of them. So I'm going to open that up again just for another minute or so. I'm expecting a few to rattle in as we continue. So Amy, what is your absolute total favorite thing about Intacct? What is your favorite thing? Like, if you were to pick one thing, what is it?
Oh, that's really hard. It's so robust. It's just so robust, and it does so many things. It doesn't do everything. I mean, it's not, it's not a magic bullet, but there are so many benefits to it. I think what I use the most, what I appreciate the most probably is the dashboarding. I think that gives me an eagle-eyed view. When our financials are done at the end of the month, I have different dashboards set up and I run through them, and there's an executive dashboard, there's a strategic plan dashboard, there's a transportation dashboard, there's a COVID dashboard, there's a grants dashboard. So there's all these different dashboards. There's an incentives dashboard. I can go through and look at all these different areas instantly. And I'm like, well, I wonder what was happening last year. Well, I just changed the filter and boom, I've got last year's information in front of me as well. And the other nice thing about it is I've added a collaborate stream. I've added a collaborate group to a couple of them. So I have an executive level dashboard that is a lot of ratios and high level stuff. And I've added a collaborate group for the executives that are users of Intacct. And so I can add commentary monthly to that collaborate stream, and I can grab a screenshot or add a file that is separate from Intacct to that comment, and it emails them to let them know that that comment has been posted, and it sort of like teases them to come look at the executive dashboard. But just having that like running commentary of what was happening, and the dashboarding is probably the most, and part of the reason dashboarding is so useful is because of that non-financial data.
Okay. Awesome. Wes, what about you?
Yeah, this is honestly a really hard question for me as well. It's really hard to choose something. Tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and pretty much my favorite part of the system is, I'm going to kind of reiterate what I was saying earlier about purchasing. It's just like, it's so flexible. Some people think it's just like, oh, it's just a place to do purchase orders and purchase requisitions and things like that. No, there's so many things you can configure in that module to post GL stuff to particular books, accrue certain things, and like we mentioned, it tracks approvals at every single level. One of the other things I'll bring up, kind of one of my other favorite things about Intacct that we haven't brought up too much is their API, their application programming interface is really nice to use. And for essentially what that means is it's really simple to integrate with. So Intacct has an open API where it's just like, you say, hey, I want to create a journal entry using this data and then push it in, or create a bill using this data and then push it in using an integration tool, like what we have with MainerLink. Integrating with Intacct itself is pretty simple. Sometimes the challenge is getting the right data from the source system. But that's what we were talking about earlier, is you can really only, you can't integrate and you can't bring in data that doesn't exist or isn't nice. So yeah, the open API is really great. And it's a lot of fun to build integrations with Intacct.
James, what about you?
Oh, I think for me, it's easy. It's a dimensional reporting. It's the ability to use those dimensions to slice and dice information. It's just so easy. I just love it. Compared to the old segmented chart concept of the old legacy systems, it's just night and day, the difference.
Fabulous.
I'm going to add one more thing. It's really easy to support, and it's really easy to access from anywhere. So you can just, it's any internet enabled device can access Intacct. I've taken support cases before when I'm like in like the barber's chair, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like maybe it annoyed the barber at the time, but you know, it was like client needed something. I logged into their instance of Intacct on my phone. I found what the problem was, and then I shot them just an email off, all using my phone. So it's like I didn't have to VPN in anywhere. I didn't have to remote in anywhere. I just pulled up on my browser and then just took care of it.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome things. Well, I think we're going to give everybody a little bit of time back today, which is excellent. This has been an amazing conversation. I am a personal fan of everyone on this call. So, and Amy, I think is one of the coolest people ever. So, you know, it's just me personally.
Just my hair.
It's just your hair. But I want to take an opportunity and thank everyone for their time. I look forward to hopefully doing another one of these in the relatively near future, because I have enjoyed these conversations. They've been great. I've gotten a lot of great answers and new answers that I didn't even know of. So I want to take everyone and just thank everyone for their time, and give everyone about 14 minutes back of their day, which is great. And yeah, any closing comments from anyone?
Yeah, if you schedule one of these and you have Britt on with budgets, definitely let me know because I am in. I want to hear. I want to hear what's going on.
Fabulous. Maybe we'll just do a budgets one and fun stuff like that. But I want to really thank everyone. Wes, do you have anything else? James? No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else to add besides just thank you everyone for attending. It's really exciting to get in front of people and just talk about Intacct, right? It's like it's been such a big piece of my career for the past 6 years, and I still love I love the system. I'm always finding new things to do with the system. So
Yeah, we need a support group so we can all geek out together.
Right? But great. Thank you, everyone. Also, all those who attended. There are a couple of Intacct people who are on. So huge thank you for all the attendees. And that's it for the day.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
thank you everyone.
Bye, everyone.